Yup, we're back with another rusty old piece of shit. But this time, it's a rusty old antique blowtorch. Well, everyone loves a blowy now, don't they? Now I know what you're thinking. Those sellers at the antique fair saw me coming a mile off. But in my defence, I only paid a fiver. So, nah, you're right. Even a fiver was taking the utter piss. Anyway, if you 659 lovely people ain't sick of watching me turn scrap into illuminated electrical hazards, you will be after this, because today I'm going to turn another rusty old piece of shit into a very shiny and highly impractical decorative desk lamp. Now, as I mentioned, I bought a few of these at an antiques fair, because A, they polish up shinier than a jeweller's cock ring, and B, turning them into lamps is surprisingly easy, assuming you don't mind ignoring electrical safety regulations, that is, and have an unhealthy addiction to polishing your nozzle. Your blowtorch nozzle, obviously, you dirty-minded bastards. As you can see, this specific paraffin blowtorch was made by the Monitor Company, who were a Birmingham-based engineering firm that started producing both stoves and blow lamps for people who clearly hated having eyebrows all the way back in the 30s. I'd estimate this specimen, which is their Model 26, is either from the 50s or 60s. 32 quid. Maybe those antique fair vendors didn't quite mug me off as much as I thought they did. Yeah, she's absolutely caked in crust and has less vintage charm and more of a left in a canal kind of vibe. But let's see if we can get her back to her former glory. Apart from a few stiff components, dismantling the blowtorch was as easy as dismantling the pathetic excuses of a Labour politician. This is her fun hole where you top her up with fire juice. And let's remove...
Dean.
Oi, we did that in the other episode.
Okay, sorry, prick.
Let's remove these threaded nubs holding on the combustion chamber and bracket. Yeah, we know what a threaded nub looks like, mate. And then, as Bill Clinton said to Monica Lewinsky,
just pull it off, baby. Oh yeah, that's good. Your president truly appreciates your patriotism.
shut up, Bill, I'm not even American. Here's a combustion chamber. It definitely ain't meant to be that colour. The bracket, and this is a wick, which does something sciencey and is used to get vaporisation started apparently. Off you come. Whoops, where are you going? Now the pump and plunger. Yeah, it's on pretty tight. And even after 60 years, it probably still pumps better than I can. The air release screw. Here is where I basically ripped the handle off trying to get the burner out. This thing was stiffer than a priest in a playground, but a bit of gentle persuasion and some swearing profusely did the trick in the end. Yeah, that handle's definitely going to have to come off. Okay, so I hereby present to you all the parts, laid out like a vintage alien on an Area 51 autopsy table. Let's give this paraffin tank a blast on my own bodged polishing wheel. This is the nylon filament attachment, let's see how she does. Oh, bloody hell, this corrosion has embedded itself deeper into the brass than narcissism embeds itself into my ex-wife's Facebook posts. At a puny 1000 RPM, this own bodge polishing wheel is about as effective as a condom in a gangbang at a darts club. And it will take a lifetime to reach the bling factor of Mr. T's neck chains.
It's war paint for the neck, you f***ing fool.
So until the nylon filament attachments for the Dremel, for the Faultmaster 3000 arrive, this'll have to do. If you saw my other episode, you'll know that the Faultmaster can finger blast the rust with a stupendous 30,000 nub flicks a minute. So with a nylon filament attachment, it should remove the grime faster than Keir Starmer can say,
Some women have penises.
I don't want to polish this stamp away. Knowing the provenance of your rusty old shit is highly important. I'll use the Faultmaster with the softer tampon disc attachment. Yes, we all know this attachment is made from unused tampons. Now this should prevent us from going too far and buffing out the maker's mark. I got most of the crap off, both the combustion chamber and the paraffin tank, and got them to a reasonable shine factor. But I continued getting further into the nooks and crannies once the nylon Faultmaster attachments arrived. At this point, I've gone about as far as I can without removing the handle. Yeah, here's where my over-enthusiastic handiwork did the damage. Let's take it off. In an ironic twist of fate, it's going to take a blowtorch to fix a blowtorch. Okay, so set the blowtorch to gas mark level 5 and gently heat up the solder joint. When the solder goes shiny, it's liquid. So with some gentle persuasion, she should... Nice. There's not an insignificant amount of solder left over on these joints, which we'll have to remove. I seem to have used more flux than a plumber with Parkinson's here. I mean, I probably didn't even need flux, to be honest. So I spent the next 20 minutes blowtorching the leftover solder and then trying to wipe it off the lamp like a teenage premature ejaculator watching RedTube before family dinner. I'd say this is my second biggest idiotic solder moment in my saga of stupidity. Yeah, not having a proper vise or proper workbench in this cave is really impeding my already substandard abilities now. I'll have to get that sorted. Anyway, removing the solder from the handle was way easier. After much swearing and frustration, I finally had the old solder off, but I'd made a mess of the highest f***ery, so I had to start the polishing process all over again, and not for the last time. Now I'm sure there are better methods, which I'll hear all about in the comments, but in my clearly flawed opinion, this is how you should do it. First, use a nylon filament disc to get rid of the deep corrosion. This one's 400 grit. It will leave quite thick polish marks, so buff out the marks with polishing compound and the tampon disc. Give it a good rub down all over. Finally, give her one last molestation with the cotton wool wheel until we're at a reasonable level of shininess. After what felt like half a lifetime, well, it's far from perfect. I mean, there's still some faint lines from the 400 grit attachment that just won't come out. But still, it's probably the shiniest it's been since rationing ended. I'd say we're halfway between a magpie's wet dream and Mr. T's jewellery at this point. Now, time for a very brief intermission while you click the like and subscribe and I share a story about the Labour Party. Keir Starmer and David Lammy were on a plane talking about how to win over more voters. Keir Starmer said,
Yeah, I could throw this £1,000 out the window and make one voter very happy.
David Lammy replied,
That's nothing, Keir. I could make 10 voters very happy with just £200 if I threw 10 £20 notes out the door.
Hearing this, the pilot turned around and said,
Well, I can make 68 million voters very happy for free.
I gave it the same treatment to the rest of the components, starting with the handle, then the combustion chamber, then the pump, and all the other bits and bobs. One thing I should probably mention here is that the Dremel,
the Faultmaster 3000,
threw in the towel yet again. Fucking silver piece of landfill fodder. Fuck you. Fixing episode coming up soon on that one. Anyway, I finished the polishing with a big old blue phallus storm force. For reattaching the handle, I scratched the surface up first, because solder likes something rough to cling to, which is coincidentally why I married my ex-wife. Then I punctured the base so that I can facilitate intercourse with a cable a little later on. Okay, it's time to get this handle back on. As you're about to find out, I'm no plumber. I mean, sure, I've incorrectly soldered a few pipes here and there, but I don't think that counts. And no, soldering pipes isn't a euphemism. Now, soldering a handle onto a curved brass cylinder is, well, let's just say it's easier to get a Labour MP to say biological reality than it is to solder this thing straight. Having a vice would definitely have made it easier, but until I get my old vice delivered by my burly cousin, I'll have to manage without it. So here are my multiple pathetic attempts at trying to solder the handle back on. But firstly, a little prep work.
Attempt 1.
Yeah, for some stupid reason I thought aluminium tape could withstand the heat from a nearby blowtorch. Massive fail.
Attempt 2.
Let's try using clamps this time. Somehow with both too much and not enough solder. I blame the uneven distribution of solder on my incorrect application of flux here. It just wasn't flowing to the parts it needed to get to. Bloody hell, this is so bad it's actually hard to watch. I think we're going to have to call these run-based errors. All in all, another massive fail.
Attempt 3.
Okay, let's try using clamps again, but this time we'll eat it up with the solder when it's already in place. Now I know it ain't the right way to do it, but there ain't many options here. I just don't have enough hands. I mean, I ain't a f***ing pipe soldering octopus. Okay, this bit isn't me taking my frustration out on the lamp. I'm trying to wedge the solder further under the handle. Oh god. Now I know this looked like a fail, what with me almost setting a man cave on fire and that, but with just a touch more solder, the handle is connected to the lamp more firmly than Hunter Biden is connected to corrupt Ukrainian energy companies.
Quick, it's an emergency. We're running out of coke and hookers.
So let's judge this abomination on a scale of 1 to terribly fucked. Well, it melted relatively evenly. Yeah, I'm going to have to give it another fucking polish, but it's not any worse than it was originally. Now, you've seen enough of me fondling my brass today, so we'll skip the polishing, and I'll show you what it looked like after getting rid of all the solder crust. Okay, the solder joint don't look too bad now. It's definitely an improvement. At least I ain't going to fucking fall off any second. Okay, time to lampify this relic. Let's turn this fire starter into an actual lamp. Firstly, I affirmed the burner's gender by chopping off its outy bits and turning its phallus into a love hole. Don't forget to take off the sharp edges for cable protection. So this is where the cable will enter the nozzle. And let's make this the exit point. I mean, it's got to come out somewhere. Protection is very important, which is why I always carry one of these rubber things in my wallet.
I told you to stay away from electrics, Grommet.
No, this is the other kind of grommet, one that actually likes electricity. Hopefully it will stop the whole edges slicing through the cable insulation like a samurai sword through runny dog shit. Thread the cable through the grommet in the base and fish it out the top. I should have probably stripped it first, but I don't want to change the habit of a lifetime and start doing things the easy way. After I stripped it, I whacked on a bit of heat shrink and then fed it through the newly transitioned non-binary nozzle. Make sure you torque the burner compression nut to the manufacturer's recommended torque setting of VFT. Using the completely wrong tool, because everyone loves authentic antique scratches. Well, we don't want it looking too new now, do we? Position the cables so that they're in the centre of the burner. Get the chamber clamp and chuck it on a combustion chamber. You'll need to throw some threaded rod through the combustion chamber and secure it with some washers and a couple of tiny nuts. Honestly, these nuts are so small that they make my minuscule marbles look like fucking beach balls. You'll need to do this so that we have something to attach the lamp holder to. Now this bit's tricky. Throw the combustion chamber assembly onto the blow lamp while encouraging the wires through the threaded tube. Damn these ambidextrous bone crunching sausage fingers. If you have slightly more finesse than me, you might even be able to complete this part in under a day. After about 2 hours of fumbling around like a Parkinson's patient trying to put on a condom with oven mitts, you should end up with something looking a bit like this. Once a burner and combustion chamber assembly is on, chuck all the other bits and bobs on too. Starting with the pump, and then of course the fire juice cap. Back to the pump, just to mix it up a bit, and of course the threaded nubs. And now everything's finally back together, we're ready to install the lamp holder. simply screw the lamp holder base onto the threaded tube sticking out of the combustion chamber. Then shove the wires into the correct terminals of the ceramic part of the lamp holder and carefully screw it with the same hesitation that you screwed your last Tinder date. Push the ceramic part of the lamp holder into the base, and once you've jammed it in there good and proper, screw the cap back on too. For the finishing touches, let's get the wick and wick holder back on there. Now we can't reuse the old wick, it looks rougher than an Albanian hooker's snatch.
Oi, I ain't Albanian, you dirty butt.
So let's get a bit of vintage looking string and throw it in the wick holder as a replacement. I can't quite remember how this thing went on. Maybe we can throw it on here. Nah, let's get it on here. Actually, easier to get it on the front. Yeah, that'll do. Okay, so now we'll put a switch onto the cable so that baby you can turn it on. Shut up, Tom. Nobody asked you. I don't particularly like these switches. They're not very vintage and they just don't seem to, well, switch very well. But it's all I've got at the moment, so it'll have to do. It also doesn't have an earth connection. So here you can see me soldering the earth cable together. And just in case you didn't know how a switch works. Oh shit, I almost forgot the air release screw. Bloody hell. That was almost a major run-based error, that one. Okay, last up, let's throw on an old plug that last passed the PAT test back when the Labour Party weren't trying to compete with the CCP in the Communist Cup. Of course, we'll give it the obligatory earth continuity and insulation resistance tests, because proper earthing could mean a difference between...
Ooh, fancy lamp.
And...
He was dead when I got here, officer.
Yeah, the line between quirky decor and manslaughter is surprisingly thin in the eyes of the law. And voila, as the French say, a very shiny, antique, impractical and potentially lethal decimal. Nice. Alright now, everybody cross your fingers, put on your arc flash gloves, and... lovely. I'm still alive. And that's probably the most surprising thing out of this whole blow lamp saga. I donated this shiny illuminator to one of my musically inclined friends, and this will be its final resting place. R.I.P. Well, lovely people, if you found that mildly entertaining, blowtorch that like button, solder down a subscription button, share it with your favourite ex-president.
I gentlemen in the blow lamp in the locker, children hair to sniff.
And stay tuned for the next instalment of Fixing Rusty Stuff.
Restoration Project.